Lots of painful memories, yes. We spent a whole week in a old military base, as you mentioned, and it was that was the same week that I was carrying Peter as well. So we're doing all sorts of different actions throughout that whole episode. But yeah, that was a really fun time, and it was actually, you saw a lot of like we were landing on mattresses. That's quite rare. We normally just fall onto the floor quite a lot of the time. But the way they filmed it meant that we could hide pads in. But there were moments that you saw in there we were falling onto the ground, and obviously you only see it once on the film. But that one take has probably happened 10 times before, and they've picked the exact one they want. So it's quite. It can be quite arduous. Get used to bruises and things. So yeah.
Presumably you did fewer takes in the 60s and 70s, Derek. I mean,
you did one take if we could.
Yeah.
If you're still alive, then that was it. So.
We have one over here. Yes, this lady. Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for any young film students? My son is a film student and he wants to go behind the scenes. Do you have any advice for him?
Advice for young film students, what would you say?
Doing what?
My son wants to get into everything, like he maybe try stunts, coordinating or directing or anything like that.
Well, to my mind, like in most jobs, you've got to start at the bottom and work your way up. As regards, get a job in the industry, on the production side, whatever, and see if you can't get in with the stuff, helping with their costumes, and eventually move up. You can't go straight in and say, I want to be a stuntman, I want to do this. You've got to work your way up and prove yourself. And that's the only way you can do it, isn't it?
Yeah, especially from a stunt perspective, you're only as good as your last job, and that goes for the coordinators as well. If they employ people who then do a bad job or hurts an actor or gets injured, then that's their job on the line too. But especially if they want to go into the directing or anything like that, just absorb movies, absorb TV, get to learn how they film these films, because the techniques are ever changing every year as to how they film things. Look at the lens size, how close the camera goes to the actor, the transition from looking at how they film fights between how they film a romance scene. They're shot very differently. So just absorb yourself in those things that you enjoy.
Yes, thank you. Gentleman at the back, yes.
Can I ask Andrew what stunts he did on Star Wars?
Yes, so I did...
What Star Wars?
So one convention.
Please continue.
So I did all the sort of modern Star Wars from the last 8 years, basically. A lot of them were stormtroopers. So a lot of wire work, so anytime you see an explosion and a stormtrooper flying, that's generally the wire work, and countless hours of just getting shot by...
What's wire work, Andrew?
So the wire work is if you see an explosion and you see like a performer moving backwards very quickly, they're normally on a wire, so we'll wear a harness under the costume. And with weeks of rehearsal and dialing in those movements, we'll have like wire work. So a lot of the stuff like you see, like all the floating stuff, or things that, for example, a lot of, if you've ever seen Aquaman, obviously that's not filmed in the water, that's filmed in the sky, or any sort of like film like Gravity, where it's kind of weightless. That's all done with wire work, and the wires are being edited out of the picture. So there's lots of different work in that sort of scene. But yeah, for me it was more stormtrooper action.
Thank you.
Something Andrew just said. I don't know if you remember a film with Alan Ladd, Jack Palance, called Shane. And there's a scene in it where Jack Palance, one of the actors, Elisha Cook Jr., was only small, and he's standing on a step like that, a saloon, and Palance is here and he shoots him point blank range with a .45 pistol, and he must have been on a harness or something, because it went backwards about 10 foot, into the mud, and it was a great effect. And as you said, it was probably on a harness and a wire,
Yeah.
pulled him, like, which it would happen when them slugs hit him within the chest. Yeah.
I don't hear you.
Yeah.
sir.
Derek, I want to ask you about EastEnders.
No,
what's
go
it
on.
like working with June Brown and Barbara Windsor and all those great people?
Yeah, they were all good people. I've known Barbara, well, sadly gone now, but I knew her before she was in the business, because we both come from the East End. See, I come from Bow, and she was just up the road from Stepney Green. So, but June Brown was a lovely lady. She never stopped smoking. Oh, I mean, I wonder she lived as long as she did. When you get to a certain age on EastEnders, 70, you're given a car to take you home and to bring you to work. And she was the only one who had permission to hold an ashtray while she was in the passenger seat. So she could smoke there and back, you know what I mean? So, yeah. But lovely lady, lovely.
And yes.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Andrew. You said there was like 6 disciplines stuntmen have to be like, they have to pick like kind of 6 specialisms. So I wonder which ones are yours, and out of them, like which are your 2 favourites?
Sure, great. So one of the disciplines has to be a martial arts. Obviously, our bread and butter is fighting, whether it's hands, guns, knives, swords. So one of them has to be a martial arts. So mine was judo, and you have to be a brown belt or above. They're now looking at black belt status, so that's many years of dedication to being a martial artist. And obviously, that's just you getting in. You know, we have to be so well-rounded in terms of the styles of fights. So my training is ongoing, so when I'm off work, I'm learning new skills as I go. So that's the martial arts. I also did high diving, so that's all off a 10-metre platform. Trampolining, which is basically a whole catalogue of different moves and different things that you can achieve, like full rotations, reverse rotations, twists, all those sort of things. I also am a dive master, so basically nearly instructor level for diving, so we have a lot of underwater scenes that require your knowledge of being safe in water. Also, another one, we use a lot of wire work, so knowledge of how to tie knots and how to rig equipment safely is key. I also did swimming tests, which is one of the hardest fitness tests you can do out there. It comes from the military side of the fitness that they do, and we've adapted it to doing things like swimming in clothes and stuff like that, which you'd do on a set. What else? How many is that? Martial arts.
Did I get 5?
That's 5. What else did I do?
It's funny because years ago we couldn't even tie our own laces. And tie knots, he's saying. But also, Andrew, and is it true, there's a lot of good stunt girls,
Amazing.
stunt ladies.
Yeah. I actually think the ladies have it harder than us because they're always wearing dresses or, you know, shorts, typically revealing clothing, the actors, and then they're having to fall down a set of stairs. And we can hide our pads in our jeans and stuff like that, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
they're a breed of their own, the girls, definitely.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? Sorry. Thank you.
Which one was your favourite?
What was my favourite? Yeah. I really enjoyed the martial arts because I've been doing that since I was a child, so learning more martial arts was the most fun. And also, I'd never done trampoline before, so that was really good, and having the spatial awareness in the air is really key, especially when falling out of buildings and all sorts, so yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. At the back, sir.
Yeah, I noticed that those explosions in that picture are quite a long way away, aren't they? And I watched a film recently where I saw a guy get run over, and it was a split second, but you could see the car stop and he proves up on it. And I was just thinking about the kind of tricks that they can use in filmmaking to make what you do easier, I suppose, or look better than it does.
Yeah, with those, so like they wanted to achieve that, they use like a long lens, so you see the depth of perception better, so the explosions look closer than they should be. even though they still feel very close because you can feel the heat behind you. A good trick that they do a lot now is if you ever see anyone get run over by a bus or something like that, obviously they're not running stuntmen over in a bus. Well, yeah, Derek probably speak otherwise, but what they tend to do now is they'll have a camera in a position, a locked off position, so it's not moving. And what they'll do is they'll get the performer to perform the stunts. They get hit. They'll typically have maybe like a buggy or a quad bike with like a ram, and just basically bump him, and that'll be the stunt. And then what they'll do a clean pass where they'll have the bus drive through frame. So they've got two shots, and what they'll do is they'll put the two together, have the stuntman in front of the bus, and that will create the effect of actually getting severely run over by a bus. So that's one typical thing that you'll see quite a lot. Yeah. And that's very much down to the coordinator to decide those things, because they're the ones who shoot action the most, so they know the little tricks of the trade to save budget, money and time, all things that the accounts want to know.
Going back a few years, the John Perjury, do you remember Betsy, the car, the yellow car? Well, we were all down somewhere, and there was this 5-barred gate made of balsa wood, and John drives Betsy at speed through it, smashes through it, and it just splinters. But the other side was 4 stunt guys from HAVOC, and one of them, a man called Alan Chunce, who sadly is not with us anymore, he was there, and we were all dressed in uniforms, and we had these German boots, stormtrooper boots, and on action, John's come wearing through, and Alan left it just that bit too late. As John's gone through the gate, push, he's caught, and spun Alan. We thought John went mad. I mean, he's an actor, he's not a stunt man, and he went ape. How dare they? He was annoyed. And then we went over, we thought his legs were going to be smashed. But what happened was the thick leather of the boot must have saved, but it took all the skin off the shin so that the bone was just showing. So we took him off to hospital, and they took him home afterwards, but nothing was broken. It just sheared, because the shin bone is very close to the surface. So. But there's a point, in fact, where professional, that wouldn't happen. I shouldn't think that would happen now. But he left it a bit late, because we weren't coordinated athletes like they are now. You took a chance, he comes, I'll leave it, and then go. You know what I mean? And that was it. So that's the difference between then and now. So.
Yeah, good thing to know. I did a car knockdown a few years ago, so this is the sort of difference. Back in the day, they would have just gone, right, who's doing the car knockdown? And you'll put your hand up and then away you go. Whereas now, like, we have rehearsals, so like we'll strap a pad on the bonnet and we'll rehearse the day before, and then actually do the stunt the next day. So we know the speed the car's going, the timing, and the angles that the director is going to shoot from, so you can help save yourself by maybe planting a hand down and then rolling through to it, rather than hitting the back of your head or something like that. So I think the difference really is the budgets. Really, the budgets have grown massively.
Sure,
back then it was all done on a shoestring, and now you've got things like Lord of the Rings, £100 million pound per episode, and you think, bloody hell, that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Has there ever been a stunt that you've been too scared to do, or that you've refused to do because you were too scared of it?
Andrew?
I've not.
Oh, I got one. A series called Budgie with Adam Faith and lovely big Scotsman Ian Cuthbertson. And there was a scene, and I had a Jag 2.4, a lovely grey Jag, and Adam Faith's supposed to be in it, and I said no, don't want him in, put a dummy in there. I drive down Chapel Street Market in North London, and I have to swerve around, hit the side of a stall, a greengrocer's stall, up the curb, straight through a plate glass window of a shop. So we got it all set up, so we got the dummy in there, and they put boxes in front of the store, so I went off up the curb, a little ramp there, up the go and straight in. And I was worried about, again, no precaution, in case anything came, the plate glass, because it was real glass, whereas now they wouldn't use it. And I was thinking it was going to come through the window at me. I was a bit worried about that, but you just did it, and that was it. And then a bloke standing at the side here, he said, "I'll give you 100 quid for that car." I said, "You're joking, there's nothing wrong with it." So they got it out the window, put it back. I started it up and drove off, and that was it. So, but it scratched the paintwork where it had gone through the plate glass. It had ripped off gouges on the bonnet and on the roof. But that was a bit scary, I suppose. So, again, not coordinated like now. You wouldn't have just drove through the glass, so it would have all been sorted out. So, sorry, go on.
For me, I've been not available quite a few times, so I haven't got to a stunt and not done it. But I did have to think twice about the helicopter one, because no one practiced to jump out of a helicopter. But I just relied on my knowledge of like working at heights, and obviously we had a lot of time to practice and rehearse, and so yeah, haven't turned anything down, but just not been available.
I like that. That's good.
Yes, Joshua. Yes.
I just wondered, so even though you do your training, surely everything inside you must be saying, don't do this, sort of like the natural instinct to avoid these situations that you get into. So how do you kind of use that and get on with what your job is?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have nerves as well, because if you were too comfortable, you become a bit too blasé, and that's when a lot of injuries can happen. You'd be surprised, all the big stuff like fire burns and getting knocked out of knocked down by a car or jumping out of a helicopter, never got injured doing those things, but it's the little things, the repetitive things, falling on the floor multiple times is when you get quite a lot of your injuries. In terms of taking that switch, your natural instinct to fall over is to put your hand out.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're on set being shot in the head, a dead body doesn't go like this, does it? You have to learn how to fall without using your hands. So there's different techniques you can use to do that, by just falling on your side or falling on your back, and that's where a lot of the martial arts experience, judo. In judo, you're falling over all the time, and all those skills that you accumulate. But when I first started, I really had to think twice about just your basic falling over, because you just do want to put your hands down. But it's about using your body and using more mass of your body to absorb the shock rather than just one point of contact, if that makes sense.
Time for one more, I think. Yes, sir.
I just wondered if in both of your careers, if either of you done any sword fighting work. You know, it was quite common back in the 60s and 70s to have an adventure series of sword fighting, and now it's quite popular.
Sword fighting.
Yeah, I worked on Game of Thrones, so obviously that's pure sword fights and stuff like that. So that's the main thing. I've done a thing called the Spanish Princess. That was kind of sword fights as well. It's typically really terrible costumes in February when it's the most cold time of the year, in sandals. They never seem to shoot a Roman fight in the summer in Morocco or anything like that. It's always in a field in Wales or something like that. So as I said, we do train a lot in swords. As I said, it's less common, more and more common, but yeah, there's still the few key TV shows and films that have those aspects.
I think there was a time when sword fighting was a standard skill for actors, I think, because there were so many stage fights in Shakespeare and so on.
Well,
Actors were just trained in it.
There's a film on a little while ago with Tyrone Power and Basil Rathbone called The Mark of Sorrow.
Yes.
Not the new ones, black and white. And Rathbone was an expert swordsman, and Tyrone Power. But it's all, again, Andrew would agree, with the big heavy swords, it's rehearsed. 1, 2, bosh, bang, bong, and you get used to doing it. You all know what number you're going to hit. Whereas with the foil or the epee, it's all quick, and you have to be skillful at it, and they are. Scaramouche, another good film, with Stuart Granger and Mel Ferrer. It was the longest sword fight I've ever seen. Robin Hood with Errol Flynn. Again, good fighting, again with Basil Rathbone. But those were the old days, so
Well, we're coming towards the end of that panel, but gentlemen, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And thank you for coming and telling us about the experience of working in stunts today and back in the 70s. And thanks so much for coming to the con.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll just say, if you've got any more questions, we'll be out there anyway, so if you want to know any more stories. But also I'd like to say, if it weren't for people like Derek, and the teams like HAVOC, we wouldn't have a stunt industry. So I know he says we're a well-oiled machine athletes, but these guys took it to the level. There was no stunt industry. It was just extras who, you know, were a bit athletic themselves. And they made it what it is now, so thank you.